What's going on? What's going on? It's your boy Storyteller Jet with another episode of the That's So Fire Talk Show. And today I have my boy here, Jason, in the show. We are going to be talking about a lot of really cool things as it relates to direct mail. I had some really amazing conversation with him yesterday around AI. So we're going to be touching about that and how you can utilize AI to actually make your life better and easier with everything that you're doing in your business. So if this is for you, if you are ever curious about direct mail and AI, this talk show is for you. Jason, what's going on, man?
It's happening, man.
What's
Happy to be
happening?
here. Doing all right.
Man, such a pleasure having you on the show. I know we chatted about you coming on maybe a month or two ago, so it's kind of really cool that we're here right now.
We made it happen, man.
We made it happen.
Excited to be here.
Yeah. So let's do a quick introduction of who you are.
Sure.
And then after that, we'll talk a little bit about your origin story, your come up story. Like, what are some of the things that that you learned along the journey? What are some of the successes that you've had, some failures, and the lessons that you've learned from them?
For sure.
And then we'll dive deep into the conversation.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Awesome. So who's Jason?
Who's Jason? I'm an engineer by education. Spent most of my career in product management. Grew up in the Midwest, and eventually that landed me long circuitous path to launching Whitespace Solutions, which we essentially have a done with you direct mail service called Remail Direct. And then we do AI integration consulting for real estate investors.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, you were originally from Michigan, right?
That's right. Yeah. Metro Detroit area.
All right, Jeff, can we shut off the show right now? This is, I should say TOL, EDO, or, go Rockets. I went to school in Toledo, Ohio.
Got it. Okay.
The rivalry between Michigan and,
that other school.
That other school, which I really don't care about, really, but I just kind of thought it was
It's a fun competition, But I grew up Red Wings fan, Lions, Tigers, all that. So and then obviously I went to Michigan, so I was a Wolverines fan as well. So,
oh, really?
Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Go Blue.
My brother here went to Albion, Michigan. So he's lived in Michigan and doing all the other stuff. But I was in the other side at the University of Toledo, which was kind of cool, to meet Josh and Tiffany High, which I found out that they went to the same school as well. Which was
no kidding.
Cool.
Wow, that is wild.
Josh actually played football for Toledo, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
We actually were there around the same time.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Wow.
And I
Small
didn't know
world,
about him too. But
Small world.
Cool. So, so one of the very first question, which I think is really one of the most important question that I ask people about the show is what is their origin story? Because I truly believe there's power in sharing your story because other people can learn from it, the successes that you've had, the failures that you've had. So how did you get started in that field? Obviously, once you graduated from Michigan, what did you do after that, and what put you on the path that you are in right now?
Yeah, I kind of followed a very traditional path out of school. I went to, I landed at, first of all, I came out of school in 2010 when the market was pretty upside down. Real estate was upside down. Everything was kind of a mess. But I landed at a large consulting firm, and that was kind of the path I was on. Spent a couple of years there, jumped to another consulting firm, hated that. Then I was like, okay, let's try something different. Went down sort of the startup path, which got me out to Chicago. That startup ran out of money. So I got to see how that doesn't always go to plan. And then I went to a sort of larger private company. I wouldn't call it a startup at that stage. It was like Series E, fintech company out of Chicago, and spent a number of years there. But along the way, I was always interested in real estate. Bought my first house right out of school back in 2010. And I was always curious about that path, but I was also pretty impatient. And so I'd always have little side hustles. I built a mobile app in the App Store and launched that. I started a beverage business. Terrible idea. Would not recommend it. Burned a lot of cash on that one. But I was always trying something. I was trying to figure something else out outside of the W-2. And fast forward many years, probably too many years, but 20 2018, 2019, I started looking at that first house I bought. I was like, oh, this is kind of working out. Granted, it took like 9 years to get there, but I was like, okay, what if I just doubled down on that and figured out that problem and figured out investing and like the structure I need to put in place. And so bought my first multifamily out of state in 2019. And then basically every year after that, it kind of snowballed.
Really?
And that, like, I figured out how to leverage equity that I had in the other property, essentially bought the entire building cash, financed it, got it rented out, typical kind of like, I wouldn't call it a BRRRR strategy, but that was kind of the idea. Renovate it, get it rented out, and pull out the capital, and then roll that into the next thing. And so that was kind of the start. And then built, obviously 2020 happened, but saw what I thought at the time the biggest deal I could possibly take down was $1 million building in Wicker Park in Chicago. Leveraged everything based on everything I learned, bought that, lived in it, fixed it up. So I was just trying to like rinse and repeat that model to build equity. And then fast forward another year or two, that led to my first syndication. Started learning how to OPM, right? Raise other people's money plus my own capital to take a larger deal down. And then that's kind of was my pull into like the real estate world. And then sometime in 23, I left the W-2. Had an opportunity to work with some other real estate investors, wholesalers, and was able to leverage sort of my technical background and bring it into their business. And then that fast forward to 2024, 25, that got me to launching what was White Space Solutions. And so the idea there was bringing some of the skill set that I learned in sort of the product tech side, bringing that into the real estate space and really just solving problems in that space.
That is pretty awesome. So it's interesting that you were able to do all of these things while you were still working on your W-2. That is incredible. That's hustling.
Yeah.
But let's go back a little bit about like your, I guess, like entrepreneur journey things.
Yeah.
Like you launched the beverage
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
Like what was that exactly? Like what kind of beverage was that? Was it like
Well, so naturally coming out of college, hangovers were a thing. That was also around the time that, what was it, 5 Hour Energy was starting to get really popular. It's still popular today. And so I had this idea. I had talked to somebody about these remedies or supplements they could take to like sort of like mitigate the side effects of a hangover the day after or whatever. And so I had this brilliant idea to call it pregame. And it was meant to be, it had these supplements matched with like the energy drink that people were often doing, before they're going out or, again, it was really popular. So I was like, okay, I'll try to do this novel concept, call it pregame and launch that. And so I literally would myself out of the trunk of my car after I had it manufactured with a co-packer, I would like deliver them to all the like local liquor stores and on the campus at University of Michigan.
Wow, that's incredible, man.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So obviously that failed.
Yeah, I'm not selling that today. I learned a lot. I mean, I had to do everything from finding the supplier, like building out the ingredients, hiring designers to build out the packaging. So it was the way I looked at it when I embarked on that endeavor was it was sort of my own MBA. I wasn't interested in going to school for another two years or so. So I was like, I'd rather take that sort of investment, actually invest it in taking a shot on a business. But yeah, I learned a lot of lessons. I didn't know, I underestimated and I didn't have the skill set or tools in place on the sales marketing. I underestimated what it took to actually get into like C-stores. I was more interested, I'm a builder. And I also learned that. Like I was able to, I really enjoyed the development and the building and the kind of the creative side of that, of ideating on how it would look, what the packaging would be. So I learned a lot, but basically lit like $50,000 on fire.
Wow.
At like, I was 20 something. I was 25, 26.
Yeah. Actually, you shared a lot of things that you've learned, but I would like to ask you if you had to boil it down to the number one thing that burning $50,000 has taught you that has been a really great transferable skill or lesson that is helping you today, what would that be?
I would say the one thing would be focusing on margin, like the revenue of the thing that you're doing or selling. There's a bunch of other lessons, but it was structurally set up to fail. So like even if I had been successful, the margins were so low and the competitive environment was so great that, I was never going to outsell 5 Hour Energy. And like it kind of was like very close competitor in that category. So I think really nailing down like the business model and like plan and like the revenue structure and the margin on whatever it is that you're doing, it needs to be not percentage points. It needs to be like multiples.
Yeah.
And so now like when I look at things, I think about that very differently. And so I think that's like the main thing I took out of that.
Yeah. It's awesome. Like some of the lessons that, it's kind of stepping stone, right? Like some of the things that we learn along the way that at the moment we might think that is like the craziest thing. Obviously, burning $50,000 is a lot of money.
Yeah, it doesn't taste good.
doesn't. Yeah, that's a hard lesson to swallow.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that is a stepping stone for the greater things that you might have been destined to do in the future. So, yeah, that's incredible. I mean, that you've learned that lesson, and now that we're sharing with the people that are watching this to not make the same mistake.
Yeah.
So I have I guess like a burning question for you.
Sure.
What is the secret of working a W-2 job to like growing another side business and investing in $1 million buildings? Like how did you do that?
Nights, you just put in extra time. It's nights and weekends, right? And when you're in your 20s, early 30s, you have that time. I struggle with that now because once you have kids, like your time is only going to get shorter. Like it's going to be crowded with other things. And so I really focused on investing that time in trying to build longer term wealth. And so, and it was a demanding full-time job. I mean, we were startup type environment. We were building, launching products. Like I still remember 3 a.m. nights in the office just for what I was doing on the W-2 side. But so nights and weekends are when I would spend looking at deals, underwriting deals, educating myself as much as possible on, how to structure the deal correctly, or on the syndication side, like what's the compliance side of it? Like what legal structure do I need? How is that going to work? What are the tools to do distributions? Like learning what I didn't know. And yeah, you just do that nights and weekends.
Yeah. What advice would you give to anybody that wants to become an entrepreneur and that is a W-2 right now? Like if they had to go to 0 to 1 to make that transition, what would that be? And what is the biggest advice would you have for them?
Well, first I would say it's hard and it's uncomfortable. So be prepared for that. But what I would say in terms of how to like overcome that obstacle would be always be learning and take massive action. Like in order to kind of overcome that, you got to put yourself out there. You got to put the pieces in place to set you up for success, and you got to take the action. A lot of people, I think, stop at the learning and they just keep like consuming YouTube videos and books and hoping that's going to get them somewhere. But you got to actually take the action, put in the work, and at some point you put the book down and you just got to follow through on the plan or whatever the thing is that you learned. And then maybe once you achieve that next step, then you pick up the book again and figure out what it is that you need to do on the next step. So that's what I would say. Always be learning, but also you got to take the action.
Yeah, for sure. What did you go to school for at Michigan?
Engineering.
Yeah. So how do you make the transition from engineering to real estate investment?
That's a good question. I think I've seen this pattern. There's kind of a trend where I've actually come across several engineers that are also investors. I think there's, I know for me, I actually enjoyed in the early stages, like being very hands-on. There's something like tactile about, swinging a hammer, taking down some walls, like installing cabinets, that kind of thing. There's that aspect of it. It's also very analytical. You got to run the numbers. Engineers, I like spreadsheets and like the formulas and calculating to figure out like, okay, how is that going to make it successful? And then obviously you have to bridge the gap from, spreadsheet to actually making it work. But I think the skill set and interests sort of align. So I think that's a portion of it.
Yeah, I do see the trend now that you say that too.
Yeah.
A lot of engineers are great risk investors. Shout out to my boy Steve Trang over here. He's probably like the
That's
biggest
right.
one
That's
that
right.
I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that were an engineer before and made the transition
100%.
as well. So yeah, that's awesome. So you've you've accomplished so much like during your journey. And when did you know that you wanted to launch the direct mail business?
I wish I could say I had a plan for that. That didn't exactly go quite like that. But it just so happened that while I was at this fintech company, that after we built the product, we had to scale the product. And the way we did that was really two marketing channels. It was affiliates, so think like Credit Karma, Lending Tree, the likes of that. And then it was direct mail. And on the direct mail side, we in the finance space, you're able to use big data. You're able to use credit reports, and you're able to build machine learning models to drive the targeting of how you do that. And so I got to see firsthand building sort of at scale a direct mail program for a large fintech company where we were doing 2, 3, 4 million letters a month across the nation, slinging credit cards. So I wouldn't say like, oh, I'm gonna go start my own business on that, but I'd seen it, I'd worked on it, we scaled it. And so I developed a sort of skill set around it. And when time came to kind of go off on my own, those were the skills I was able to tap into. And at the end of the day, when you're building any business, you're trying to find where can you add value. And so that was like one of the first areas I was able to like immediately add value to other business owners, operators, real estate investors. Yeah. And so that's how it started. And so the first offering that I kind of went out with was, the direct mail automation sort of service that we provide, and that's where it started. And then from there, I started just identifying other problems that needed to be solved, and then trying to provide services and products around that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you: did you see any gap in the direct mail industry that you thought you were going to be able to fulfill more than others, or was it just because of the skill set that you've learned that you just wanted to lean into that and grow from that?
Yes, on the first question. Was there a gap? Yes. The main thing that I saw, I think in real estate in general, it's like very underserved from like a technology perspective. Like the maybe the quality, it's just not quite the same as some other industries. And then on the mail side, it's just kind of a hairy problem. There's just like a lot of moving parts. You really need to get data right. You need to get, if you're doing large scale, and I'm talking like 50,000, 100,000 pieces a month kind of volume, it becomes sort of like operationally difficult to run. If you want to do it well, you could just cut a file and send it to somebody, and then maybe you do that same process every month. But if you want to get really precise to really optimize for ROAS and like maximal lead gen of a particular list, you need to get really detailed in terms of how you're doing segmentation, how you're doing cadences, how you're thinking about multi-touch sequences and strategies to deploy multiple sort of marketing tactics. And then in the final stage of that, you need to have the data reporting and attribution work really well. And so there's this gap between how do I tie that out to the CRM to complete the picture. And then finally, you got to close the feedback loop. So you got to learn from what you did, close the feedback loop, and actually change something in the process. And then you just cycle back through that. And so that was the gap I saw. Most people weren't doing it really well. They would, have a process in place, but kind of doing it haphazardly. And I said, look, like this is how we did it at scale for a big company, and try to take this like enterprise grade sort of methodology and bring that into the real estate space. So that's kind of where it started. And so we have a pretty robust setup in terms of how we do each of those stages, how we enrich the data, how we pull in things like valuation, pricing for making sure we put the right offer in front of people. So we've really thought through every stage in terms of how to do that really well.
That's awesome, man. I can't wait to dig a little bit deeper onto that. But when you were starting that, did you face any challenges at the very early stages of starting that business?
Yeah, there's always challenges. The first part is always trying to understand the needs and like actual core problems of whoever you're working with. So the first challenge is like defining that clearly. And a lot of the first conversations I had wasn't even necessarily around direct mail. It was more around what was going on in the business. But in the context of the mail and what we were trying to build out, you're trying to solve, you're kind of building the plane when you're flying in the early stages, right? So you're trying to provide, quality execution and delivery and results, but at the same time, you're trying to build it as you go. And it's hard when it's like you yourself are doing things manually, whether it's, everything from, list pulling aggregation, and then building up the platform. Could be custom integrations. So over time, your goal is to sort of simplify the process and even internally in your own business, automate as much of that as possible so that it's consistent and repeatable. So the hard part was building while flying and delivering and trying to live up to the promises we made as a service provider. So that's gotten easy over time as we've solidified sort of the setup, the structure, and made it in such a way that it's more repeatable and easier to deliver.
Yeah, for sure. For anybody watching this who haven't touched on the name of that direct mail business yet, I think you did at the early stage, but what is the name of the business? And
it's actually a good story here.
A good story there. So I love good stories.
Yeah. The company's Whitespace Solutions. .ai. The AI was because I also knew I wanted to move into the space of helping businesses incorporate AI. Whitespace, big picture, the common term, you have white space to solve the problem. That was the bigger idea. But if I take that a couple steps back, it was tied to a car wash.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I almost bought a car wash. I sold that first property I bought in 2010, and I was like, okay, I've never done a 1031, let's try to figure that out. And then I paired that up with I've never bought a car wash, let's try to figure that out. Actually, what happened was I couldn't find more multifamily that I wanted to do in the area that I was at, and so I opened up the scope, and then I started entertaining car washes, and I found one. And so if you ever watched Breaking Bad.
I have not, but I've seen a few clips of it.
Yeah. So in Breaking Bad, there was a car wash, and also Walter White. There's a lot of parallels here, but there's a car wash, and the name of that car wash was A1A Enterprises. Well, that deal never went through. I won't get into it, but there's environmental concerns. It kind of went down a different path. So failed 1031. I couldn't use the LLC. And then when I landed in the spot of launching Whitespace, I used that entity. And then I borrowed the Walter White, and then I was like, I like the idea of Whitespace Solutions.
Wow.
That's how we landed there.
That is funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. For any new investors out there that may not know what a 1031 exchange is, what is that?
It's probably one of the bigger tax advantage plays in real estate. So, conceptually simplifying it, you have when you go to sell an asset, if you want to essentially roll forward and not pay capital gains or depreciation recapture on the asset, you can use it. The 1031 is just the tax code name. You can use that as a vehicle. There's filing and a bunch of hoops you have to jump through in order to achieve that. You execute the transaction through that vehicle. It's very difficult. It's a very narrow time window in which you're able to do it. And then if you do that, then you basically roll forward the losses or the tax liabilities that you would have. And so that's the benefit, because you can then you're essentially using those tax dollars that you would have paid to then buy another asset. And so it's a very efficient way to grow.
Yeah.
When executed well.
Yeah. So, my former life, I went to school for finance, and then my very first job was as a financial analyst. So, when we were doing some SBA 504 loans and bond financing and doing all the other stuff, and then one day an opportunity came through that was a 1031 exchange, and I was like, "What is this thing?"
Yeah.
And kind of figure, because they were trying to purchase a massive building. That were mostly they were gonna house if I remember correctly, was some restaurants equipment in there.
Okay.
So that was one of the way that they came up with to be able to purchase that building.
Oh, interesting.
So that was my very first in last time talking about like 1031 exchange. So when you mentioned that, I was like, oh, that's cool. Because a lot of people might not be aware of that.
Sure.
Like that way to kind of really do business, to, you know, share that a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of the game in real estate is roll forward your gains as long as possible and kind of compound. And then, you know, in some cases you can take advantage of the write-offs as you go. But yeah, that's a big part of the play.
Yeah. So you started that direct mail business. What are some of the challenges that you faced along the way? Obviously, an entrepreneur that is getting into a new space, not kind of like learning as you go. What are some of the challenges that you face and the lessons that you've learned from that?
I mean, yeah, it's challenging from every dimension because, as I said before, you're building while you're flying, and so you're trying to like operationalize a service offering. It's usually going to just start with you, maybe a partner. So then you're this like solopreneur trying to do everything, which that alone is hard. Whether it's just you know, having a sales meeting or like responding to emails on like a support level, or it's actually building the thing or maintaining the volume and managing it and doing the delivery. So all of those pieces are tough to do at once. And then you have to figure out, okay, what's the next step here? It's okay, I need to hire. Then you have to go through that process, right? And then that's a whole thing on its own. And then and you got to train them and you got to put them in place. And so the first time you're doing this all is hard because it's the first time, but I think, you know, it gets easier over time as you build processes and systems to execute that. And then outside of that, you know, it's vendor management, vendor relationships that you may be brought in to build out the platform, and maybe something goes wrong there, and then you got to deal with that. And you got to deal with the client. Maybe you're swapping out vendors, right? So then that becomes a whole different part of the business in terms of how to build that out. And then it's every dimension, you know, and then it's like, how do you grow? And then it's solving on the marketing side for a marketing business, you know? And then so you have to figure that out, whether you're running paid ads or building out your own website or focusing on SEO. And so, you know, the challenge I think is juggling everything and then staying focused and really trying to focus on the things that are gonna at the end of the day maximize revenue. Yeah. So you're essentially trying to solve for the same thing within your business that you're helping other people solve for in their business. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot to take on. So it's just a matter of like getting really clear on your intentions. Try to surround yourself with the people that'll help you along the way. One of the many reasons I joined Family. And that will kind of, I think, put you on the path to be successful with it. Yeah.
I would love to chat about Family in just a second. But before we go there, what is the biggest misconception that a lot of people have around direct mail?
I think people don't fully maybe understand the depth of it. I think that like it's commonly there's common perceptions. Like either some people feel like it does work or it doesn't work. They tried it once, but then like they stopped it because they had a bad experience or whatever. I think the common perception is there's like always one winning piece. Like what people want to know, like what is the thing that's going to get the lead, right? You know, I think that's a misconception. I don't think people appreciate like the amount, like the importance of the data and the precision that you need in the tracking to actually execute really well. I think I think there, you know, people throw a lot of numbers around, whether it's ROAS or response rates. I don't think they actually understand, or it's not always clarity in what people are actually talking about. So I could throw out, you know, I had clients that would do 3x ROAS. I had clients that would do 15x ROAS. How did that happen? What are the actual intricacies of that? Well, it actually comes down to like, what's the average spread on the deal? What was the deal? Like, was it a multi-million-dollar property? Was it, you know, so there's all these things kind of stack up where people sort of misperceive what's there. And so I think like once you get into it, it can be really complex if you want to do it well at scale. Mm-hmm. You can do it small and do small niche lists, and you'll probably hit some bangers and it'll probably be fine. But I think in order to scale the program, you have to essentially like have a more sophisticated process in place in order to allow it to be successful. And then even then, you got to test and iterate and see what works. The market changes, marketing changes, competitors change, right? So there's all these variables that sort of go into it. And you need the right tooling in place to make that successful. So I think that's like the missing element when people look at it. And we try to help we try to help not like allow people not to have to worry about that, and just give them make sure that all those things work behind the scenes. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to, in the real estate space, deliver contracts. That's the end game.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. What do you see is working the best right now in the direct mail industry?
Every market's different. I think data's a huge part of the equation. So I think getting better data, and that's the thing I'm always looking for, is like, how do I get better data? I think even there, people have misconceptions around what that actually means. But, it's a function of the counties. It's a function of if you have any level of propensity scoring, that's a big input to it and can be really useful in iterating and optimizing. So data is a big piece of it. On the creative side, I like to think that it's a smaller percentage of the overall equation. I think it's probably like 10 to 20% of the equation. I think the other remaining, call it 30%, is really around the strategy and the sequencing and honestly the follow-up. So it's not like a one and done kind of game. It's like 4 to 6 touches kind of game. So it's a long-term play. And so in order to be successful with it, you have to be committed to sort of that strategy. So I think to sum that up, it's like nail data, find a good list provider. I think there's a lot out there. I think it's have the system in place to operationalize it, which would include the reporting. And then on the creative side, we see that like a lot of the common tactics still work. It's it's offer letters, it's check letters, it's variations of that. Handwritten letters work really well. And so I think once you put all those pieces together and just lean into it, you can find success.
Yeah. Would you recommend to add both like a phone number and a website and a mailing piece, or would it be just kind of focusing on?
That's a good question. Yeah. I would say no. Usually the goal is one call to action. Mm-hmm. And so you do that for a couple of reasons. Like I think on one school of thought is like, oh, it's more ways for them to contact us. But the other school of thought is it's distracting from getting them to do the one thing that you want them to do. And so usually my recommendation to people is like, just get them to do the one thing. Caveat to that is like call or text. So I think that's kind of the same, channel. I think texting allows it to feel a little bit more intimate and personal and less commercial. So I think that's useful. And then the second like part of that is sort of polluting your data. So if I send mail, you want them to call that number because you can track that. But if they land on the site, it's way harder to track that. So then you start to pollute like your ability to report on response rates, gross response, net response. You can always ask them, but it just makes it a little bit more difficult. So we try to keep it tight.
Yeah. What do you think about the idea? And this is just an idea of like creating a like specific URL that you will be driving those people
to. Yeah. Actually, like my fintech days, that's how we did it. So we had a landing page that people would go to, and we would use QR codes and things like that to get them there. We also used an offer code, so they would come and they would enter that onto the page. But that type of experience works, I think, well on a digital first company to begin with. Like we didn't have sales teams; they had to go to the site. They applied online, right? So like the journey was very much online. Whereas with real estate, that's not always the case. But if you do it, I think know who the audience is, right? That's where the segmentation comes into play, right? If you're targeting like a high equity or downsizing, like that skews older, maybe their preferred mode's not going to be the site, or if it is, maybe it's mobile. So these are just like things you test. People always ask like, should we use a QR code? I would say yes, but only if you're trying to drive to the site. Yeah. And I think there are like, if I was going to throw out like an interesting thing for people to test is around if you're going to go the site route. Really think through the funnel. So you could even set up, so like the QR code actually embeds data in it, or you have the ability to. So you could actually like pre-form fills. You could actually say, hey, scan here to get your offer. The entire site could be built around that individual. You're already going to know who they are, what the property is. The page could even, we're not doing this yet, but I've thrown out the idea. The page could bring up like the actual photo of the property. So it could be like very customized to the individual. It's like, hey, here's your offer. Or it's a starting point, call us here. These days, talk to our AI agent to move that further. So I think if you want to go that route, you got to really lean into it and then think through the full flow of it. Yeah. And I think you can find success.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking you that question because right now, one thing that we do and help people with is we create their ads. Like they come in the studio, they film their ads that basically then drive people to their page, for example. And on that page, a lot of people are not doing that yet, but like creating a VSL that kind of really
Yeah, I think that would work well because
Yeah.
you build credibility, you show who you are.
Yeah.
And especially with like a high dollar transaction, they want to like, do I trust and know and like this person, right?
Yeah.
So I think that could be killer.
Yeah.
I don't have anyone doing that yet. But
Yeah. So for us, that's kind of the whole plan
Yeah.
and the whole thing that we're helping people with, having a bunch of ads that drive to a VSL that kind of deepen that relationship with those people, and then once they submit their information to get their offer, and on the back end get a thank you video that further kind of explain some of those kind of things and kind of
Yeah.
paint the picture for them,
solidifies it.
solidifies it, but also on that same page have like all of the frequently asked questions videos already lined up, all of the like how the process work, like any things that they can think like as it relates to process or additional information to build that trust with them. So before they even receive a call from like your team members to kind of talk about the offer or anything like that, they now kind of spending some time with you to learn about your organization, to learn about your values, your process, like all the things that they should expect with. So we have all of those kind of things. We actually have 150 topics that we already have scripts written for people that they can come here and just film
Nice.
those and then have all of those be ready to be putting on that landing page.
Yeah.
But one idea as I was thinking
Okay.
about
Let's hear it.
is doing that for like the mailing side. So like you send those mail pieces out, and then instead of like having a phone number on there, you put like a custom URL in there,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
even that QR code
Yep.
that maybe goes to offer that evotionstudios.com. So that is a specific URL that you can track that is not going to pollute your data.
Yep.
And then that takes you to that landing page with that VSL with all the information to kind of start building that relationship with those people.
Yep.
And then the back end have that thank you video also with all those videos preloaded as well.
I like
So that
it.
was the idea that other than what we were already doing to partner with some other people on that direct mail side to basically offer that as an option for them as well. But I also really like your idea of like get all this information in there and making it like more customized to that person that is signing up.
Yeah.
Maybe still have that video on there, but kind of putting some other information to kind of really paint that problem for those people.
I think that's great. Like if you want to like set yourself apart from the competition, I would say test this out. Try something like that, doing like that type of funnel because nobody else out there is doing that. So, and the tech that now is in such a manner that you could deploy something like that, I think, relatively easily.
Yeah, cool. So you think that route would be a good idea?
I definitely think it's worth testing. And I've thought about this a lot, but I haven't had anybody that has had necessarily the appetite to pursue it. It's like when things are working, it's like don't break it.
Yeah.
But I think that's like one of the mantras like in anything you're doing, and especially in marketing, it's like always be testing. And I think that's like when you have something that's new, novel, and you can like sort of differentiate yourself a little bit. I think that's powerful, and especially in maybe in scenarios where there's like less distress and it's less obvious that like a transaction has to happen. It's more like a trust factor of like who they're searching around. Who do I trust? That's a way to build trust.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think having all of those videos too would be really good because now a lot of people they're trying to do like speed to lead, like hey, as soon
Right.
as within 30 seconds that we receive that lead, let's call them and kind of do it,
Right.
which is important.
Right.
But if you do have all those videos that they can spend a couple minutes in and kind of start to watch all of those, now they can get familiarized, and if you call them and they don't answer, they can still kind of get all of that videos and learn more about your organization.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I would like to move now into the AI portion.
Sure.
How do you
Okay.
use AI to really optimize or drive revenue with the direct mail business?
Well, yes. I mean, as a company, like we offer it in kind of like two buckets. We use AI internally for like everything that we do. So, AI is not driving leads through direct mail. AI is not sending the mail, but we use AI to at every step along the way. So whether it's building out like the avatars that we build out content around, whether it's like the knowledge bases we create around the copy that we write for those pieces, and how we sort of tweak, refine, and ensure that we're incorporating like the best practices in the limited amount of real estate that you have. We use AI to work through that process. And then we use AI sort of like on the data and reporting side in terms of how do we build out that infrastructure. So AI is really good at SQL, funny enough. It's a language. And so you can use it to build out the reporting and the insights that you need to make that work really well. So it really helps. It's embedded sort of in end-to-end in everything that we do. Outside of that, so we often will advise clients on how they can leverage these tools in their business. AI is very hot right now. Everyone is sort of FOMO mode right now, where people are aware of it. They want to do something with it. They're not sure how to use it. Like, hey, we got to use this in the business. And so for that side of the business, I'll sit down and spend some time with the organization to understand what is the sort of like AI literacy of the team? What are the ideas that they have on what they think it can do for them? There's a lot of people that are thinking it's like a silver bullet and it's going to solve all the problems. What I would say to that is like it's not going to fix a broken process. It's not going to fix a broken team. It's not going to fix a broken business model. It's really like just another tool in the toolkit that can help you optimize the business and like 10x your business if all the other right pieces are in the right spots. So that's what we do there. And then we usually do like an audit over the course of a couple of weeks. We look at all of the pieces and figure out where things are broken. Sometimes the solution isn't AI. It's just, hey, did you know that has an API? And we could easily like integrate these two systems and get them talking and save 5 hours of your team's time. Other cases are like, hey, we want to use AI to help us with better understanding all this unstructured data that we collect. Oftentimes that looks like calls.
Yeah.
Right? The team spends a lot of time on the calls, or in some cases even in-person meetings, right? So I actually brought one with me here. I'm testing. It's like a recording device that will record everything, transcribe it, and then you can use AI to essentially ascertain what happened, right? And so if you care a lot about the sales and training that you put your team through, we provide the solution around how to score, how to extract the structured data that you would care about. It's like, what was the offer price? What was the motivation? What was the address? That you can easily send back into the CRM. And then more importantly, we can pull out, hey, did we miss something here that we need to sort of action, like follow up with the lead, like the sales team dropped the ball, whatever the scenario might have been. And then in addition to that, sort of the coaching for the individual. And so closing that feedback loop with them on every call, right? So that they can understand like, hey, here's our normal sort of checklist on how we do trainings. Did you hit all these boxes? Here's what they said, here's what you could have said differently. And we can build that based on their training program, the company's training program. And sometimes we even pull in books like Chris Voss, for example, is a popular one.
That's a really good book too.
Yeah. So we can dump that into a RAG database and essentially pull from that to incorporate that back into the personalized training to the individual.
Yeah. We had a fantastic time at Family Mastermind this week, and one of the session was around AI, where Frank, no, I'm joking, Francis came and was, moderating the room and asking people around like a bunch of questions. What are some of the biggest things that they're working on with AI? I guess for you, like sitting in the room, and we'll talk about some of the conversation we had over there as well too, but sitting in the room, listening to all of those like people talking about some of the tools that they're using, what was the most surprising idea, or what is something that you took away from that whole conversation at Family Mastermind around AI?
I think the most surprising thing to me was just the wide array of understanding. And we were in a pretty high level room, and there was like a pretty good high literacy in terms of AI and what some of these things are, but there were still a lot of people that just like didn't even know maybe acronyms. So I was mostly surprised about that. In terms of what I found surprising where people were having success is like their ability to build and the frequency, like some of the people that are really adopting these tools is their ability to build solutions for their own business just the way that they need it. And that's actually really powerful for business owners. And I think that's if you have sort of the wherewithal and interest to do that in your own business, you now have the opportunity to pursue that. And if you don't have the interest, I would recommend find somebody that is playing with these tools and have them either, whether it's external advisory type thing or it's like an employee on your team, get them to solve those problems, because you now effectively have the ability to build custom solutions for your business at almost no cost. Other than the time and effort and to build it. But good example, CRMs. Most people don't love CRMs. They're hard because it's built for the masses, but it's not tailored to your business. And so you now kind of have this opportunity to do that. And so that's the most surprising thing that I saw. People were actually building that, which is cool.
And more than that too, which was actually that was really cool for me to see, is some people are using AI to, like, that was an incredible idea, using AI to populate the information that they would get in their CRM. Like maybe, you just got like, their phone number and their name and the address. But I think somebody mentioned that they build a tool to be able to kind of scrape all of the... Yeah, you were the one that mentioned that. Scrape all of those ideas and now like fill out all of those different things inside of your CRM, which is incredible. Like, that's cool. Like crawl the website, getting all the information and kind of build that. That was really cool.
And I think like my hot take here would be that people sort of have like the wrong idea of AI. In my mind, it's not as if it's like this magical thing that's just gonna do everything for you and solve all the problems, right? It's an orchestrator. It's a layer on top of the tools and skills of the thing that you're trying to achieve. And so I like to think about it in the context of like an SOP, right? So normally, I can give a good example of this. I had like an 8-page SOP that I would normally give to my team. And every time we set up an account, they'd have to run through this. And it was complicated. It's like touching multiple systems. You got to configure keys and get permissions. And it's very detailed. I was able to take that SOP, give it to, at the time I was using Claude, I'm still using Claude Code, but I gave it to Claude Code. And it basically built out an agent to execute that whole thing. So the agent is really like an orchestrator, but it still uses all the tools, right? So fundamentally, all it needs is the access to the tool. So that's where like the skill comes in, and then it just instructions on how to use the tool, and then a sequence of like what the process is. So I think that's like the best mental model of like when people talk about agents, like that is the unlock factor when you build sort of purpose-built agents or sets of skills. Like that's what ultimately like what you're solving for. The fundamentals of the technology are still there. So it's like APIs to whatever your CRM is, or whatever to your database is, or whatever the scenario may be. It's more, and when people say training, it's like, what did I instruct the agent to do with that skill? And so that is where the power comes. And when you are able to build that out, you're able to get huge leverage.
Yeah, for sure. Something that came up into our synergy room. Something that came up in our synergy room was some individual, maybe like me, that are extremely afraid of not extremely afraid, that have that like nagging thought that is kind of saying, wow, like AI is a threat, that may be able to take some other people's, businesses, or how can we use AI to kind of really leverage and growing your business? What advice would you give to those people that might be having those thoughts that maybe AI is potentially would be, replacing their business or replacing their
For sure. Yeah. A couple things. I mean, usually fear comes from the unknown, right? And so if you haven't invested the time to like understand what's going on, or understand what the tools are capable of, or even play with them, then you're kind of just subscribing to headlines that you see in the news, right? And a lot of times that's just like hype cycle, or a lot of times it is fear mongering, and I think that's why people get freaked out by it. But I think once you get into the tools, and even if you just spend a little bit of time with them, you kind of realize like they're actually not all that smart. Like so there's like a divide, and so when it comes to AI, it's really like it's about who's using it and like what they're able to do with that tool. Now these things are evolving quickly; they are getting smaller. ChatGPT 3 to compare to like, I don't even know what we're at now, 5, 4, 5, whatever. Way smarter. Claude came out with all their models, way smarter, and so they are much more powerful. So I think that's the piece of it. Like, you feel the threat of it. I would say spend the time to better understand it. And the second thing I would say to that is, look, we are built to adapt, humans, right? Like, we are constantly evolving. Technology is always evolving, and honestly for the better, right? If you think back to, I don't know, pick your century. Would you still want to be living in that century? Or would you want to be living right now? It's a pretty good time to be living right now.
Yeah, 100%.
These are pretty cool. They're pretty cool tools.
Yeah.
And so I think really where people get uncomfortable is like the rate of change. And so I think that's natural, but I think we mostly would argue that it's for the best, and it allows us to do more. It's part of our evolution process. So that's kind of how I would look at it.
Yeah. Here's a hot take.
Okay.
A lot of people are saying that Claude is destroying ChatGPT right now. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh man, that's like you're picking fights. I think, yeah, outside looking in, I kind of feel that too. Because when I first started, early, I don't know, 2021, when some of these models started coming out, I was all OpenAI, all ChatGPT for everything. It took me a while to pay attention to other models. And so it's been interesting to watch the race. Like, Gemini was way behind Google. And then Claude came out, and I heard about it, but I hadn't yet sort of played with it. So I took my own advice, and I was like, okay, I just need to play. I need to explore. I need to experiment. And I started testing out some of the models. And then I would say there was a natural shift for me, and it usually just is a function of your interaction with the models, and I fully switched over. So I kind of turned, I don't actually, I canceled my subscription on OpenAI.
Yeah.
And kind of like moved the Claude direction. And then and then they came out with Claude Code, which we don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but it's really powerful in terms of, that's where I see the biggest gains in terms of use and output. But OpenAI is starting to catch back up. They came out with Codex, which is like their own version. But I think Claude's kind of off to the races because they've thought about UI UX quite a bit, and it's built on some of like the best models. And I think they're capturing more people as a function of that.
Yeah.
So I would agree, actually.
Yeah. Actually, I have both still. I have both ChatGPT and Claude, but I did have 2 accounts in ChatGPT.
Okay.
One of them was for me, and then my executive assistant had one.
Mm-hmm.
But the results that we started getting with ChatGPT, like for some reason, were not that good anymore. For some reason, like giving a bunch of errors, or like kind of giving her some errors that she was kind of getting, and also not giving the right information. Maybe because we were like kind of, it's the same process, but we were updating new documents to kind of using that same document to give an updated answer to focus just on that document. But for the longest, he was perfect, kind of like giving that perfect information about that one document. But about 2 or 3 weeks ago, it started kind of like maybe pulling things that from 5 months ago that it doesn't relate to any of that, or giving like erroneous answers. So I still have my ChatGPT, but I had to cancel ChatGPT for her and move her to Claude. So she's telling me that it's way faster and getting a lot of better results from that as well. So, which I think is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think the race is so intense. It forces people to make errors when you're moving that fast. And I don't know what's going on in the inner workings of OpenAI, but I would suspect like they ship things quickly. They maybe made some missteps. I think ever since they went from like 4.0 to some of the more recent models, I think they lost a lot of people. So I suspect they'll figure it out. But yeah, Claude's my daily driver right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a very basic question.
Okay.
How did, again, I know AI has been around for a long time, that maybe a lot of people did not even aware of what AI started. So do you have any thoughts on like, when that truly got started and how that has evolved over time?
I mean, at a like superficial level, I haven't studied this deeply, but like at a high level, it's been around for a long time. Like the study of artificial intelligence, and then you have sort of different bodies of work. So there's like machine learning, which is often sometimes conflated with AI. Similar concepts, but not quite the same thing. As far as when it started, I don't know. I would venture to guess it dates back to the 80s or even longer. And so it existed, I think, academically. I suspect many companies had built out like sophisticated models internally. My experience with it inside of companies was usually machine learning models, which are more like mathematical in nature, not necessarily what's going on with the LLMs. And then I think the real breakthroughs in AI were around like the transformer architecture of like how the models are actually built, and then that plus a ton of data at scale was kind of like when they had some big breakthroughs. And that was kind of like the GPT moment or ChatGPT when that came out. That was really the main moment of when they were testing how that worked, because they had done their first like really massive training run on it. So those all sort of led up, and then from there it's just been a boom. Off to the races.
Sure. Yeah. And it's crazy how fast that's developing right now. It's crazy. So let's talk about something that is super hot right now, which is OpenClaw.
Okay.
Let's talk. Sure. First, what is OpenClaw, and why would somebody want to incorporate OpenClaw in their business?
So OpenClaw was an open source project. All that means is somebody basically wrote a code base that they exposed to the public, enabling the public to like contribute to it. And so the developer of this essentially took a very similar structure to Claude Code, and they built what's called like a harness. It's effectively a wrapper. To simplify that, all that really means is it pre-built it with a set of rules of how it should behave, a set of tools that it has access to. And then what they did is they essentially added what they call a gateway, which is essentially access to being on your device, any device. So whether it was like WhatsApp or I don't actually use Telegram very often, but Telegram. Personally, I like Slack. So on the business perspective, that's huge because most teams are in Slack. So fundamentally, that's what it is. And then I think the next step to that is it's also generally installed on its own computer. So it has its own operating system from which to function. So you could do this on the Mac Mini. That was like the big craze. Or you could do this on a VPS, which is like a virtual server. It's just like a computer in the cloud, right? Pick your poison. The pros and cons, I would argue. But like the benefit of it is its ability to, the thing that they also introduced with it, which was kind of unique compared to maybe just talking to ChatGPT or Claude, is its concept of memory, and then also its ability to do repeat tasks. So you're starting to see this now in some of the products with Claude where they have scheduling. Those are effectively just cron jobs. Cron job is like the technical term, but fundamentally it's like, hey, do this every day for me. Do this every hour for me, that kind of thing. You can instruct it and have it build that for you, which is cool. On the memory side, it actually does a really good job at tracking the conversations that you had with it, instructing it on how to operate, how to behave, how to interact. So those things sort of, the summation of all those things made it really powerful, and it kind of captured everyone's imagination. Yeah. And that's kind of like what made it go viral. My take on how people should use it in a business, I mean, the other tools are getting close. So we talked a little bit about Claude. In Claude, they now have Cowork. That's captured a lot of people's imagination. That's like a lighter lift, more approachable way to do a lot of the same things. It's not quite there, but that's what they're experimenting with. Whereas OpenClaw, for me, I use it as sort of my a team of agents, and I structure it to align with my business. So it's effectively my chief of staff. And so the tool is only really as powerful as the tools that you give it and the instructions that you give it. So if you do a poor job of that, it's not going to do well. And I think that's where, some people that kind of just like disappears. It was maybe too overwhelming to set up or couldn't like have the right mental model around it. But for me, chief of staff, it's plugged into my calendar. It's plugged into my email. It doesn't send email for me. It doesn't do any of that, but it's just plugged in. So it has visibility into everything that's going on. It has access to my websites. It has access to the analytics on my websites. It has access to effectively my CRM. I use ClickUp. And so all of these are all API driven. So now it has access to see, understand, and interact with all these tools. And a couple good use cases would be morning brief. Every morning, tell me what's on my schedule, what emails do I need to respond to, give me the links right here. So like directly in chat, I can action them quickly, move fast. Chief of staff, right? Yep. Like prep me for the day. I'll have meetings on my calendar. And before the meetings, I tell it, if I haven't met with this person before, send me a briefing on them. And so OpenClaw has web search. So it can go to LinkedIn. It can go find their website. It'll search for them on Google and try to find as much information, synthesize all that, and give me like a one-page briefing on who that person is that I'm about to talk to. Maybe highlight some things I could bring up in conversation. Then I have like better context going into that conversation for who that individual is.
Yeah.
Low-key hack I used in Family Mastermind helped me. It was like 200 pages PDF. I was like, help me understand who I should connect with. Right, help me sift through that. And then when I ran into somebody, I had a question, I could talk to it and say, hey, who was that? What's their background? What's their company? Right. So like those little micro sort of improvements on just like the interaction is where I find the most value. Yeah. And then I think the last thing I would add is I mentioned agents. So the other powerful thing with Claude in particular is you can have sub agents. And so I can have like an engineering agent, I can have a marketing agent, I can have an operations agent that are responsible for different activities within sort of that part of the business. So it can see my code base and give me insights into like something that might be broken and even ship code. It could it connects actually to my Facebook business account. It'll generate content. It puts that into like a board for me to review, approve, or I'll tell it to revise. I approve it, it posts it. Yeah. And I can crush through, a week's worth of stuff in 30 minutes, and it's now sort of like my social media manager for the business. So once you start to stack these things up, that's where I have a team of agents that like help me run stuff, and you can do things very lean.
Yeah, for sure. It's incredible, man. That's, like even listening to when we had that AI meeting at Family Mastermind, it was incredible to hear all the different use case that people are using it for. Mm-hmm. For the people, like that was a really well put, but basically you can actually Apple probably got some really good uptick in sales for the Mac Mini for that.
Yeah. They're pretty happy about it.
Essentially you can put that in your computer, and the OpenClaw basically is clicking around and doing things for you on your behalf.
Yeah, it has access to a browser on its own. So there's tools called Playwright, there's Chromium. Effectively what it does is it opens its own version of the browser and we'll go through sites. So funny use case, actually, I always forget to book my hair, like my haircut. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I wonder if I could build a skill out of this. And of course, it's there's no API for that. You have to go to the website. You have to fill out the form. You have to log in. There's a robot capture. I am not a robot that you have to click on. I was like, I wonder if I could get through this. And sure enough, I was like, hey, here's what you need to do. Here's a site. Here's who I like. You have access to my calendar, so you can see when I'm available. You can see when you log in, you can see when they're available. And then I usually like it Thursday, Friday in the evening, maybe on the weekend midday. So that's the instructions. It went out. It logged in because it was already saved in the browser. Found them, found the date relative to my schedule, clicked right past the I am human capture button. Yeah. And then it already had my credit card saved in the browser, and it just it booked it.
That is insane.
So like, yeah.
Yeah. Another really cool use case was Frank, Francis Ablola, kind of came and talked about how he was building a whole ClickFunnels page by having, I think it was either OpenClaw or CoWork, by just like while he was driving. And he wasn't
Hopefully
driving.
not driving, yeah.
Not driving on his Tesla, basically sitting on his Tesla, message his co-work and say, hey, can you build me a ClickFunnels page? And then basically texting his computer at home to build, a ClickFunnels page for him, and basically did all of that for him.
Yeah.
Like, what a time.
Yeah, it's wild. Again,
wild.
like, would you want to go back to 1800s or
No.
like it's fun, right? Like, so I wouldn't be too fearful of these things. I think the important thing to take away is like play with them, experiment with them, and implement them. Take advantage of them. Even for you as like the content and like production side, it's like it gives you the ability to move that much faster and do more than you would have been able to do 5 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever,
Yeah.
And so I would say just seize that, take advantage of that, incorporate it, stay on the front end of it, and try to learn as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure. That was one of my biggest takeaway from this week,
That's
at
good.
least. And funny enough, we probably have like 3 computers that one of them is a Mac Mini here that we're not using.
Did you order them like in the meeting?
No. I had them sitting here. I have like maybe 3 computers, maybe 2 of them are Mac Studios.
Okay.
One of them is like,
those are serious. You could run your own model on those.
yeah. So I have one Mac Studio here and one Mac like for me at home.
Okay.
So I have an extra one that I can use, and I have a Mac Mini too that I can use. So I have 2 computers that potentially you could put some stuff in there. So I'm gonna be looking into like maybe building some stuff and see what we can use for it as well. But for me, just kind of the learning curve that like might be
It's intimidating. Yeah.
So for anybody that may not know anything about that and that is afraid about the learning curve of learning how to use OpenClaw or CoWork, what would you tell them? Like how can they go from 0 to 1?
Yeah, I mean, there's stages to this, right? Stage 1, I think, is just playing with the tools, right? Whether and you choose your own adventure, whether it's ChatGPT, it's Claude. Those are like the big ones. Gemini, like those are the big 3 I would like experiment with. I think Gemini makes the most sense for most people because everyone's kind of already in the Google sphere of Gmail and Calendar and whatever else. So that's a very easy place to start. And just start to use them as tools to learn. Ask them questions. Like I think that's the most useful thing of any problem that I approach is I first ask it a question, help me understand this, tell me more about this. If it's a term or whatever I don't know, just have it take you through the process. And like that sort of recursive loop is most powerful.
Yeah.
I would start there. I would not even worry about like CoWork or Claude Code or OpenClaw. Like get a good foundation and then just build from there. Once you feel comfortable, it's like, okay, what is this other thing? Tell me about CoWork. And then you step into that and then you go play with it. And you start to build sort of your own muscle memory for how to use these tools. And that's what I'd recommend for most people.
Yeah. It's been such a great conversation, man. I'm so glad that we were able to do it. And I know you have a flight coming up soon, and it's already 3:00.
Oh, boy.
So we are going to wrap up this and then doing that. So 2 more questions.
Sure.
Actually, I'm gonna probably I'll ask you 2 questions, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay.
First, if you had $1 million advice for anybody watching the show today, what would that be?
$1 million advice, I think I would bring it back to kind of like where we started, which was always be learning and take massive action. And that's going to get you towards your goals.
Yeah, and I'll add to it, don't be afraid to use new tools.
Yes.
Use those to your advantage, and that is going to help you bolster your progress way faster.
For sure.
If you had to go back to day 1, what is the biggest piece of advice that you would have given to your younger self as you were starting your entrepreneurial journey?
Take massive action, take bigger action. I think it's easy to slow roll or you're fearful sometimes. Just go for it.
Yeah, for sure. So do you have anything like a lead magnet or like a free PDF or something that you can share with anybody watching this around AI or around your direct mail business?
Yeah. So, on the mail side, so we have a website, it's remaildirect.com. There's a bunch of free tools that we built there. There's a ROAS calculator. There's a statistical significance calculator to help you understand how to run A/B tests, all free on the site. So you can go check those out if that's the problem you're trying to solve. And then
What's the website again?
Remail Direct.
Remail. Can you spell that?
Remail, like R-E, like real estate.
Yeah.
R-E-mail, M-A-I-L, direct.com.
Yeah, perfect. Because some people might be thinking that it's REI, which they sometimes pronounce as re.
I see. Yeah.
So I wanted you to spell it
R-E-M-A, yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
And then on the AI side, so that's Whitespace Solutions. And so there we have a bunch of content on how to set up OpenClaw, for example, how to think about like what are the security concerns. So you can go check us out there. If you want to get in touch, you can find me there, submit a form. I think my email address is there. So those are both good places to reach out.
Yeah. So we were just going to be chatting about like some of the security issues with it, and all the other things that you need to be careful. But we don't have time to chat about that. So I would highly encourage you to go to that website and watch those videos that you have and other types of content around that to educate yourself. Man, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for
awesome.
sharing.
Yeah,
and it's been a fantastic time. For anybody that wants to connect with you on social media, how can they do that?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Jason Mox. Just look me up. I think I'll pop up there. Maybe you find me on Twitter, Facebook. I don't post there a ton, but I'm trying to do a little bit more content. Maybe we have some things to work on at some point. So any of those are good. LinkedIn, or just email me, jason@whitespacesolutions.ai.
Boom. There you have it. I hope you guys have a fantastic day today, and I hope that you learn a thing or two in this talk show today. So make it a great day. Let's go, baby. That's so fire.